Hello everyone and welcome back to more of the Labyrinth of Grisaia. In the last episode we met the stunningly beautiful Captain Garrett, who just so happened to take a little bit of a liking to us, and she showed her affection by slapping us in the face repeatedly, but I'm sure it was out of love for us. So here we go. The next day, having finished the vegetable-based rabbit food lunch we were served every Tuesday, I took advantage of the brief break before afternoon lessons began, and headed over to the Post Exchange, or our on-site retail store, with my rubber stamp in hand. Retail store might sound impressive, but it was basically just a place where you could buy civilian goods supplied to the military for slightly lower than market prices. The selection was pretty random and the staff didn't give a damn. In fact, the staff was actually just older students who took shifts behind the counter. Naturally, they weren't the friendliest salesmen in the world. From what I'd heard, a job in the Post Exchange did come with some perks, but since I was only scheduled to be enrolled here for half a year, I probably wasn't going to have a chance to take advantage of that. The store opened at 11 a.m. and closed at 7 p.m., earning it the nickname 7-Eleven from the students. But it was really just a warehouse with a counter in front, right behind a metal shutter, barely even being worthy of calling to shop. I need a postal envelope.
いくつだ? 一つでいいのか?
2 actually, and writing paper as well.
なぜ一緒に言わん? 針金を持ってこいと言われて、ニッパーも一緒に持ってこないやつは、軍では出世せんぞ。切ってもいるんだろう。いくつだ?
Okay, if you're gonna insult me, I'll take my business elsewhere. Since I have nowhere else to take it, I guess you'll do. It was pretty much always like this. In the military, the most important thing is learning the ropes. First and foremost, as long as you do what you're told, no one's gonna get too mad at you. The tricky part is figuring out how well you can manage for yourself within that restriction. Expanding on that bringing some wire example, guys who bringing a wire cutter along to get a reputation as competent, but guys who carry the whole toolbox over are stupid jackasses. The exact balance there is surprisingly hard to get down. It's the job of those with more experience to provide lessons about this sort of thing. After enough browbeating, you eventually learn a degree of common sense that will serve you well anywhere you're deployed. In any case, after accepting my stationery, I took the notebook the clerk handed me, jotted down my name on the first empty line, then pressed my rubber stamp down next to it. As privates, we didn't receive paychecks. Our wages were temporarily deposited into Uncle Sam's wallet. It's pretty similar to the way in elementary schoolers, New Year's money ends up going to the mommy bank. New Year's money? I never got any New Year's money. When we needed to buy something from the Post Exchange, we could use our rubber stamp to access some of that money Uncle Sam was holding on to for us. It was different from the system used in Oslo's school, where students were issued tickets that could be used as currency. But in the sense that it restricted what recruits were able to buy, it was pretty much the same thing. The cashless system might sound kind of futuristic, but in practice it just meant that trade between the students tended to take the form of bartering. For that purpose, cigarettes happened to be particularly useful. There was a set limit on the number of smokes provisioned to the new recruits in the school. Everyone got 2 small packages containing 2 cigarettes each at breakfast and another 2 at lunchtime. In other words, 8 a day. No more, no less. That's actually quite a lot, isn't it? The world was getting more health conscious and all, so a decent number of people were trying to quit, but the guys who just couldn't kick the habit desperately wanted to get their hands on the non-smoker supply. As a result, they were constantly being bartered for socks, underwear, toothbrushes, towels, and other daily necessities. I didn't smoke myself, so I took full advantage of the situation, using my stock of cigarettes to obtain lots of minor conveniences. If you ask someone what a soldier's job consists of, and they start off with fighting for their country, it's best to stop listening. They're just repeating what the people upstairs pay them to say. When you want a truthful answer, you've got to start off by asking the people in mud-covered work clothes. People who know the job well tend to respond in similar ways. A soldier's job consists of digging holes, filling them back up again, rowing boats in circles, and getting smacked around, followed by shitting and sleeping. But among all the many wonderful aspects of the military experience, the one almost everyone's going to mention is running. When you're a soldier, sometimes it feels like you've never stopped running. They kick you out of bed at the crack of dawn and make you run. They strap a gas mask on your face and make you run. They put a 40-kilo sandbag on your back and make you run. They tell you it's time for a fun boat class. Then make you run to the water while carrying the boats in question. I'd been running just to kill time ever since I was a kid, and in itself, it was something I kind of enjoyed. In particular, it really helped that it didn't require having any friends or money. That said, I didn't particularly enjoy running because someone ordered me to. If anything, I was starting to hate it. I was beginning to realize that going for a run was very different from being sent on one. On top of that, running doesn't have much novelty value when you're basically never permitted to walk. My mother wasn't around to say, "You're really a fast runner, Yuji." And Asuka wasn't here to say, "Damn kid, you're pretty quick on your feet." When I thought about it from that angle, it occurred to me that my motivation for running had a lot to do with earning compliments from women. Couldn't help smiling at my own simplicity.
Oi! Shorty! Mate! Mate yo, ome. Aikata daro.
Danny sure looked like an athlete at a glance, but running was a major weak point for him. Those stupidly swollen muscles looked impressive, but they increased his overall body weight, intensified his strain on his joints, and consumed way too much oxygen. Useful as they might be for quick bursts of power, they weren't much help when it came to stamina-based aerobic exercise. And just as important. Seriously, Danny, quit smoking. It's the reason you get tired so easily. Don't you want to be the Navy's #1 Iron Man?
わかっちゃいるんだが、お前も一度タバコ吸ってるやつの隣で禁煙キャンディ舐めてみろよ。バカくせえ。
Asuko had given me a nice lecture on how crucial cigarettes and coffee were to the soldier's lifestyle. But the way I saw it, smoking came with 100 drawbacks and no advantages really. And my personal list of military essentials was topped instead by socks. Particularly wool socks. They're so comfortable. In fact, a pair I'd obtained through bartering away my cigarettes were paying huge dividends at this very moment. When soldiers run in uniform, they're always wearing combat boots on their feet, and those things absolutely are not designed for the job. The jungle boots we were issued hadn't changed much since the Vietnam era. They zipped up from the side now, but that was about it in terms of improvements. I'd spent a lot of time running around the mountain where I lived with Asuko in jungle boots just like these ones. It's not too bad when there's earth beneath your feet, but running on asphalt in these things was pure torture. Soles don't absorb any shock whatsoever, so every stride makes your joints scream. By the time you've run 3 kilometers or so, your toes are covered in blisters. It hurts. The friction peels the skin right off the area above your ankle and below your Achilles tendon. Accordingly, the very first things I bought at the postal exchange after arriving here were gel insoles designed for athletes and thick socks made for mountain climbers. This was the reason I deliberately requested boots larger than my actual foot size on the first day. Apart from slipping in the insoles for cushioning, I wore 2 layers of socks with a standard issue pair underneath the thick civilian ones. The trick was to completely cover my feet in baby powder before putting the socks on. After that, I just had to make sure I tied my boots tightly, practically gluing them to my legs. The difference between people who can run and people who just can't has nothing to do with determination or guts or whatever. It's all about their feet. If you hurt your feet so badly that you can't even walk, on the battlefield you're as good as dead. When running's part of your job description, you better have the tools you need to do it properly, even if it means trading in your cigarettes to get them. Once again, Asuko's advice about relying on good equipment had paid off for me. One way or the other, I'd managed to get about halfway through my period of instruction, which had so far consisted mostly of people bellowing at me and knocking me around. At this point, our school began to pit its low-life punks and worthless nerds against each other in a series of sports day style events. The term might make you imagine something leisurely and recreational, but naturally that was not the case here. It was basically a competitive tournament where all the squads were expected to demonstrate the results of their training so far. As for the events, they started off with the fundamentals, running, followed by more running, and then followed by swimming. Later there was some running, and the rowing, and marksmanship as well. I did have some confidence in my running, but our results were determined by the average time of the squad as a whole. Even if I had taken first place, we'd still have been near the bottom of the rankings. Back when the squad assignments were being made, the instructors had apparently struggled bitterly to get their hands on the more physically fit students with an eye towards succeeding in these contests. Squad leaders who produced good results could appropriately earn a reputation for leadership qualities, improving the amount of attention they received from the people upstairs. But of course, Squad 7 was pretty much a dumping ground for the worst of the worst. It would have been stupid to expect anything from us in the first place. Unsurprisingly, we took home the honor of overall last place in the first event. That said, running wasn't even our worst event. We had some faster people and some slower ones, but at least there wasn't anyone who couldn't run at all. Swimming was a different story. Our group of delinquents came from all across the USA. Some were the sons of fishermen raised on the coast, but others hadn't even seen the ocean before coming here. And sadly enough, my trusted partner Daniel Bone, the self-proclaimed Mr. Marine Corps, was so laden by his own muscular body that even floating provided something of a challenge for him. It was genuinely painful to behold. In terms of sheer absurdity, a Marine who can't swim has to be up there with a teetotaler running a liquor store. Teetotaler. Got me? I don't know what that is. Accordingly, everyone who couldn't swim was worked brutally until they could. Those who just weren't learning landed both themselves and their buddy in special remedial training. And so I found myself spending a rare off day at the base's 25-meter indoor pool, trying to help Danny master the doggy paddle. Danny, can you hear me, Daniel Bone? Get it together. You call yourself a Marine? Don't sink, swim, damn it! Idiot! What if a big-breasted girl starts drowning in the sea? You're planning to say, sorry, I can't swim, and let her die? How dare you let the USA's precious mammary assets go to waste? Are you trying to disgrace the entire Marine Corps? That's the way, Danny. Keep it up. The giant titties are just a little further ahead. Go mash your face into them. I love the sound effects. I guess willpower alone won't get you anywhere, huh? Well, it was a nice try. Just as the sun sunk into the sea at twilight, Danny slid slowly down into the pool, never to be heard from again. I'm just kidding. He's fine. The bubbles that rose to the pool's surface at his wake produced a giant burbling, struck by a vaguely nostalgic sense of melancholy. I gently lowered my microphone to the tiled floor. Well, at least 2 more times. As a follow-up to our running performance, we managed to capture last place overall in swimming as well. Captain Agnes Garrett was less than pleased by the state of affairs. In her hand, she carried an object of unclear origin, which closely resembled an iron pipe. The words "punishment bar" were written across its length. She emphasized her points by periodically slamming this against the walls and floor. It was legitimately terrifying. Were this gorilla woman to take a good swing at our rear ends with that thing, I was fairly sure our ass cheeks would have landed right in the middle of the fairway. That night, as it happens, everyone in Squad 7 was obliged to sleep face down with a bag of ice on their ass. This proved to be something of a turning point. When we began our training for the cutter boat competition the next day, everyone was noticeably more motivated than before. I wonder why. Rowing a single cutter boat involved 14 people, 6 rows each on the left and right, a coxswain controlling the rudder, and a fife player to set the tempo. Captain Garrett perched ebulliently at the rear of our boat, blowing fiercely at her fife. Then we pushed our 3-meter oars into the water with all of our might, repeating the process of catch and row. In this exercise, your abdominal strength and lung capacity were crucial. Pushing your oar into the water required real power, and bending backward to stroke made your abs scream. Of course, our butts were still sore from Miss Annie's loving pep talk. When they scraped against the wooden seats, it was so painful that beads of cold sweat formed on our faces. Every stroke of the oar felt like dragging ourselves over a bed of nails. I could actually feel the skin just under my tailbone scraping itself raw. They say you're not a real Marine until the skin on your ass gets tough, but at this rate, our bones were going to poke their way out first. Some of the older students had suggested a somewhat extreme method of training that involved smacking our bottoms with beer bottles wrapped up in vinyl tape. But I think they were basically saying that there wasn't that much you could do except tough it out. Before long, the day of the rowing competition arrived. With the sound of the supervising instructor's whistle, all the squads took off running towards the davits where the cutter boats waited. After untying the mooring rope, we lowered our boat to the water's surface and jumped in, then made for the buoy, floating 2 kilometers off the coast, catching and rowing in perfect unison, as if our lives depended on it. Once we looped around the buoy, we needed to speed back to the davit and hoist our boat back up, at which point our final time would be recorded, a contest of pure physical strength from start to finish. Squad 7 was a little short on intellectuals, but we had more than enough raw power to go around. In combination with our newfound motivation, it managed to earn us a very respectable 3rd place.
Yosh! 貴様ら今日はよくやった! これは私のおごりだ! なんでよし!
You better soak that in, guys. That's probably the only time we're ever going to see her smile. That's actually genuine and not some sick, twisted pleasure smile. Even as runners-up, we'd managed to bring back a small trophy. For once, our monster of a squad leader was actually in a good mood. When she stormed loudly into our quarters that evening, Captain Garrett was carrying cardboard boxes full of canned beer on her shoulders. When she criticized us, she was insanely harsh, but when we did well, she didn't hesitate to acknowledge our success. That's the Navy for you, I guess, you know. Flops, flip-flops. Probably the way it should be, I guess. That night, our group of delinquents enjoyed the intoxicating taste of victory for the first time. And driven by the memory of that beer, my easily bribed squad mates suddenly began to make remarkable progress in training. Alrighty guys, I think that's going to be it for this episode, and I will see you all next time where we continue to do the contest. How will we fare? Well, we're going to find out tomorrow. Take it easy, guys.